never know how to react to introductions of that kind. I must straightaway disabuse any responsibility for Bombay First, even though I was its first chief executive many years ago. But then it went into a steep decline. And what it needed was the leadership of somebody called Narendra Nair to pick it up from the dregs, from a pit which it had dug for itself. And today it is doing very well. Just to get Bombay First out of the way, Bombay First was a creation of the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is a huge coming together of all the big names in business in the city, who one day said to themselves, look here, we've invested huge sums of money into this city. Maybe our futures are in this city, and look where it is. So they said, let's do something about it. They got together and they created a body that was meant to make Bombay, it was still Bombay in those days, a better city to live, work, and invest in. And it set up a variety of groups led by the biggest names in the business. And these groups were meant to look at Bombay as the financial capital of the country. It was meant to look at the environment. It was meant to look at telecommunications, at health, education, and research. And it did a great deal. It produced some very inventive propositions for the government, many plans and strategies for the government, many visions that the government could take up, the government, and so it got nowhere. We just wanted to change the signboards on the streets of the city. And the suggestion, the proposition, got into such a tangle between the municipality and the police and this one and the collector and MMRDA that after 3 years we had to give it up. And that was the problem with Bombay First. It was too much the government and too little the people. So when I left it after 2 years, when my term was up there, I didn't go back to Bombay First because I said, I cannot deal with the government in this way. Because the government didn't have to listen to the Bombay Chambers of Commerce and Industry, because they determined what commerce and industry would do. So I then moved into a citizen movement, which eventually became AGNI, which is, it's an acronym standing for Action for Good Government, AG, through networking in for India. And you heard Shama Kulkarni this morning, did you?
Yes.
Who told you something about what AGNI does. Now, there are no free lunches, my friends, and if I have come all the way from Navy Nagar to Ramnarayan Ruia College, there's something that you have to do also. And that is, think of all that you've heard today. It's bound to have raised thoughts in your head, and I have no doubt that you had questions that you put to the speakers, but there may be some questions that you were unable to get answered, some comments that you couldn't make, or some further questions in your mind, and I'd like you to come up with them. Think about that for a minute. You know, they say that Gandhiji was giving a long and lengthy interview to the correspondent of the New York Times. This was just before the Dandi March. And after a 3-hour interview, Manjeet Holly, I'm sure, would have loved to have been there, except that it happened 50 years before she was even born. And then he interrupted the question that was being asked him. And he said, excuse me, I must go now, because there go my people, and I must follow them, for am I not their leader? Think about that for a minute. It was a thought that was echoed by Nelson Mandela, who said the best way to lead is from the back. And so what I'm attempting to do is to ask you what kind of questions arise in your mind when you think of what kind of leadership does Mumbai need? What arises in your mind after you've listened to a whole morning and a part of the afternoon as well? What are the things that occur to you? What are the questions that you have to ask? Not that I can answer them all, but I'll get an idea of what the drift is. Yes? And if there's dead silence, then it means that you've all been asleep. There is dead silence. Not one question, not one comment. Yes, you. Who? Please, Abhishek.
My question was more around NGOs working together with each other. And this is in the context of youth organizations. And the whole sort of, at some level, it becomes competitive in terms of whose name or who's working with them. So leaders working together, I think that's my question. How can leaders really end up aligning with each other and working together, manage? That's one question I was.
Yeah, a very good question and difficult one to answer. Anything else? So there was only one person awake since 11 o'clock this morning. Well, all right. A bit disappointing, I must tell you straight away, but let me try and answer that question. Let me take a step back. What is it that makes a leader? You said, how can the leaders work together? How can the organizations work together? And there's no great difference between youth organizations and adult organizations and the organizations of septuagenarians and octogenarians. Let me tell you. To begin with, the vision has to be a shared one. In other words, what people want to do, where they want to go, and how they want to get there must to some extent be shared. It cannot be one group of persons concerned with education, another group concerned with urban planning, and the third group concerned with the environment. There has to be a meeting point for these three objectives. So, to begin with, the dream has got to be a common one. The vision has got to be a common one. The second important thing is that the methodologies must be acceptable to all. You cannot have a situation where some believe that the only way to get something done is by confrontation. And another group that says, as Holly has been saying, negotiation. It will be very difficult to find a common ground between those two. But let me tell you something else about getting groups to work with each other. They will not work with each other unless you guard against the enemies of association. There will be conflicts of agendas where one group of people want to appear in the newspapers, another individual wants to lay down the law, where somebody else believes that leadership means hitting people over the head. So there will be differences of views and difference of agendas where people want to get to different places. There will be difference of agenda, there will be clash of personalities. Those have got to be taken into account, and not as soon as you get a clash of personalities, you mustn't say, oh, there you are, you see. That's what happens when you bring NGOs together. They will fight, but you've got to create a situation in which you deal with the fight, in which you deal with the conflict of agendas, in which you deal with the clash of personalities. So, but the most important thing is that everybody must face in the same direction. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Now, in that sense, perhaps it would be worthwhile, now, without wishing to sell my own fish, as the Brazilians say, without wishing to sell you Agni, what we have done is we've said to ourselves that we're about the creation of numbers. We are not about a single great leader emerging and everybody else following. We are about different groups coming together to form numbers. Now, let me tell you why. Holly was bemoaning the fact that this city has lost its preeminence, not just in this part of the world, not just in the world. I happen to have been born at a time when this was a world-class city. It was a city to which people returned. It was a city to which people emigrated. They came here to live because the quality of life was so good. What has happened since then is that we have become free, but that democracy has become a particular kind of democracy. From being a world-class city, we have become a partisan backwater. We've become a city where you have competitive populism, as a result of which we don't have the kind of university that we once had. We have the kind of university where an 18-year-old can arrive in the vice-chancellor's office, bang a table and say, ban this book. And it does get banned within the hour. So what has been happening is a kind of dumbing down of the city which needs to be fought. Now, there is no problem that this city faces that cannot be traced back to a rule that should be there or a law that should be there but isn't there, to a law that is there but is not being enforced, in other words, government. Government needs to change in a variety of ways for the garbage to be removed. The widening of a street has got to be left to the High Court these days. So, if governance must change, it were best that people do it, because governance will not change itself. Governance is doing too well from the status quo, thank you very much. So, if governance is to change, we go back to the Athenian concept of the state. There were three pillars of the state. There was the political pillar, the politician. There was the legislative, they were the legislators, the legislative pillar. There was the executive pillar, and there was the judiciary. Since then, we have added the fourth estate, which is the media, which has a great deal to do with the running of the state. But look where those four have got us. The legislative, political arm, power, if you like, of the state is corrupt to the point where it needs an Anna Hazare to demand a Jan Lokpal bill. In this country, there is no true separation between the politics of the state and the administration of the state. So if one is corrupt and dysfunctional, the administration becomes corrupt and dysfunctional. The judiciary, yes, you get landmark orders handed down from time to time, but that's the problem, time. It takes... an issue about a flat has been solved out for 14 years, as we've seen in yesterday's newspapers. So good orders take too much time. So its impact on the way we live, on the quality of our life, is to some extent minimal. The fourth estate, the media, yes, they've begun to involve themselves in investigative journalism, and quite a lot is being done. Quite a lot is being taken note of by the politician merely because it is The issue has appeared in the newspapers or on television. But the problem with the media is that it has to be news. It has to be constantly new, otherwise it's yesterday's news. So often when I go to the Times of India, ring up somebody in Hindustan Times, they say, well, thank you very much, but Justin, if you've noticed, we ran that story 10 days ago. Bring us something new on this very topic. So it has to be news. And you can't always have news if what you want to do is to change the system. Changing the system, even modifying it slightly, needs hammering away at the same point, and then you may have reached the decision maker. So what you need really is a fifth estate. You need us. You need the citizen to come together. Now the citizens coming together in their own defense and to do their own, to look after their own welfare is not what was intended by democracy. By democracy is meant that you elect a group of people who then take over the welfare of the state from the hands of the citizen who do not have the resources, who do not have the structures, who do not have the systems, who do not have the mandate. So we must come together, and that is where I left Agni. We've come together because the government, and as I said to you a moment ago, if anything must change of significance, apart from some cosmetic change in a traffic island, if something must change properly, you need government to take note. And government will only listen to numbers. Now that is as it should be. Democracy is about numbers. But the problem is that the wrong numbers are listened to. The city is being run by the builder lobby and the contractor lobby. The wrong numbers being listened to. Let me give you an instance of what I mean, a more homely instance rather than these great abstract notions. There is a manhole in front of the Breach Candy Hospital. The hospital where the Prime Minister of India once turned up to have a knee operated, or was it the hip? And it began to spew raw sewage. Spew raw sewage. Say that quickly after me. Well done. It began to spew raw sewage. Letters got written to the municipality, letters got written to the ward office at Nana Chowk, nothing happened. Then one of our members, the former Agni coordinator in D ward, collected a group of, I have 2 minutes left. I thought I had occupied 5 minutes a moment ago. All right. So therefore, what you need is, but we realized what we need is to get 53 people turned up at the ward office at Nana Chowk and told the ward officer that must stop. 2 days later, it was stopped. Now we have an event happening on the 16th of February, which is the municipal election. Now, the municipal election is the only one where a small group of people can have a huge impact. The constituencies are small, relatively small. It's a constituency of 50,000 per constituency, where the assembly is 20 lakhs and parliament is 2 million. 50,000, of those 50,000, if you're lucky, only 50% will vote, which means 25,000. In each constituency. We've got 224 constituencies in this town. Those 25,000 votes get split at least 6 ways. NCP, Congress, BJP, Shiv Sena, MNS, SP, and 2 Republican parties, to say nothing of the BSP, which also threatens to put up candidates, to say nothing of the independents. So consider the fragmentation that takes place at a municipal election, which accounts for seats being won by a winning margin of 25 votes. 54 votes, 84 votes, 127. That means one building, one locality, one street can swing a seat. Now let this penny drop in your heads. In other words, if you take up your street or your locality or your building and say, we will all turn up and vote. I will have 100% voting in my building. I will have 100% voting on my street. I will have 100% voting on my locality. You will have assumed an important leadership role, an important socio-political role, because I believe honestly that at this moment in time, the kind of governance that we have has backed us into such a corner that the only way to fight ourselves out of that corner is by assuming a socio-political role, which was not really meant for us in that form. Yes, we always needed to play a socio-political role, but not of this kind, not where we are almost a political party. I do not mean that people should come out voting for this party or that. I simply mean that people must come out and vote. It doesn't matter who you vote for, you should tell people. It doesn't matter who you vote for, as long as you vote, your vote won't be wasted because you will increase the voter turnout. And that voter turnout means that you will be noticed, and that's what you need in the post-election scenario. Thank you very much for having me here. I regret very much that I must go away. I would have loved to have stayed on and answer the questions that were not asked. But I have a doctor's appointment, unfortunately. Thank you very much.